Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello,
Waalaikumsalam.
good morning, good day, good afternoon for you. Welcome to the fourth session of Learning from Mangun Wijaya. My name is Johanita and I will be your host and moderator for today's session. Learning from Mangun Wijaya is a project initiated by Sally Below, Maurice Henning, and also Edward Kogel from Encounters with Southeast Asian Modernism, and realized in partnership with Putu Ayu Pramanasari Agustiananda and Nancy Goldayuli from Universitas Islam Indonesia, and also Avianti Arman and Setiadi Sopandi from Museum Arsitektur Indonesia. Learning from Mangun Wijaya is made possible with the support of the German Federal Foreign Office. Today, I would like to offer my warm greeting to students and professors from our partner university, Rangsit University, Thailand, Kalasalingam Academy of Research and Education, India, University Malaya, Malaysia, University of Indonesia, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Bauhaus Universitas Weimar, and also National University of Singapore. And of course, our dear student from Universitas Islam Indonesia. Welcome, and uh, it's our pleasure to have you joining our fourth uh, lecture. And I would like to also say hello to friends and family of Romo Mangunwijaya, Mr. Bob Sunu, Mr. A. Jakawasana, Mr. Widodo Haryo Mumpuni, and Madam Sinta Herindrasti, and also Mr. Stefanus Solarto. I would like to also say hello to our unit master. We have Dr. Parisa Musigakama and Dr. Sasikan Srisopon from Rangsit University, Thailand. We have also architect Chris Abisha from KSOA, Kalasalingam Academic of Research and Education, India. We have Dr. Sarize Muhammad Sukri from University Malaya, Malaysia. We have Mrs. Fania Dwi Amanda Surya, SRs MDS from University of Indonesia. We have Dr. Hari Kurniawan and also Mr. Wisnu Agung Hardiansyah, SSM Arch from Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. And our dearest lecturer and professors from Universitas Indonesia. Also our unit master, we have Mr. Abdul Robi Magzaya, Mr. Aryo Akbar Ardiansyah, Mr. Faiz Hamdi Suprahman, and Mr. Muhammad Gali Gunagama. Today, we will have our speaker, Mr. Yuli Kusworo, Master of Science. Mr. Yuli Kusworo is an architect who continues the spirit of Romo Mangunwijaya in terms of working with those who are less fortunate and left behind. He is the principal of Community Architect or ARCOM Indonesia. He is also a specialist in slum improvement and community-based post-disaster development. He earned his bachelor degree in engineering from the architecture department, Duta Wacana Christian University, Yogyakarta, and his Master of Science from the Disaster Management Master Program at Gadjah Mada University, Yogyakarta. Mr. Yuri Kuswara has a long experience as a shelter or housing specialist for development projects from various international institutions from Switzerland, Germany, the United Nations, as well as various ministries in Indonesia. He planned and implemented community-based slum upgrading program in various cities. He is also experienced in community-based post-disaster reconstruction work, including earthquake resilience design based on local wisdom. Now I would like to say hello to Mr. Yuli Kusworo. Hello, Mr. Yuli Kusworo. Good day. Selamat siang, Bapak Yuli.
Assalamualaikum. Selamat
Alright.
siang. Good
Thank you
afternoon
very
all.
much for joining our session today in the fourth pre-lecture event of Learning from Mangun Wijaya. And without further delay, I will invite Mr. Yuli Kusworo to start his lecture session. So, Bapak Yuli, time and screen is yours, please. Thank you.
Ya, terima kasih, Bu. I will share my experience, but maybe better I will ask in bahasa. So, Yeah, I need to help to translating in English for all participant. Ya, selamat siang semuanya, teman-teman yang hadir di pre-event ini. Terima kasih sudah diundang, sudah diberikan ruang untuk saya bisa bercerita tentang perjalanan, paling tidak perjalanan 20 tahun terakhir, bagaimana saya menemukan dan mentransformasikan apa yang menjadi inspirasi dari Mangun Wijaya. Maybe who can help me to share my presentation?
Yeah, I will, Pak. Yeah, I will help you to translate. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to tell the experience and stories related to Mr. Mangun Wijaya.
Yeah, this my presentation about how bagaimana saya melakukan proses engagement komunitas untuk melakukan sebuah proses desain yang mana proses desain ini sebenarnya ditujukan atau bekerja dengan masyarakat yang miskin dan terpinggirkan.
Right. So,
Translate,
yeah, so this is how I engage with the societies in the designing process, and I particularly work with the marginal people, those who are poor and unfortunate.
Ya, yang pertama adalah kenapa saya mention Pak Eko Prawoto, karena beliau yang sebenarnya menjembatani saya mencoba memahami sebenarnya laku arsitektur yang dilakukan oleh Romo Mangun. Jadi melalui Pak Eko saya belajar banyak dan ini merupakan inspirasi saya bagaimana arsitektur bisa penting untuk dilakukan untuk kelompok-kelompok yang miskin.
Right. The reason why I mentioned Mr. Eko Prawoto is because he understand the story of Romo Mangun or Mr. Mangun Wijaya, and then he helped me to explain how Romo Mangun Wijaya can help the unfortunate or the marginal people to build the architecture.
Ya, paling tidak saya mendapatkan tiga inspirasi atau tiga perspektif penting dari Father Mangun Wijaya tentang arsitektur yang baik, yang benar. Yang pertama tentang aspek ekologis, yang mana di situ saya melihat dari inspirasi dari karya Romo Mangun di Gereja Maria Assumpta, yang mengatakan bahwa di situ ada hal yang sebenarnya ditujukan bahwa ngomong arsitektur tidak sekedar topeng, tetapi harus berjiwa, gitu kan. Sehingga arsitektur harus mengakomodasi alam dan meningkatkan martabat, bukan malah justru menjajah. Nah, karena ini bicara tentang alam, alam harus dinomorsatukan, alam harus diutamakan karena alam adalah ibu bagi kita semua, dan ini bisa dibaca di Wastu Citra.
Right. So at least I got three perspectives about good architecture. The first one is from the ecologist side, which is shown in the Maria Assumpta Church, which not only as a mosque but also a soulful building, which consider the nature as the mother of the architecture.
Ya, yang kedua, saya belajar banyak tentang hal-hal yang sifatnya lebih dari sekedar edukasi pada level menengah, tetapi bagaimana kita belajar tentang membagikan pengetahuan kepada masyarakat luas. Yang ini saya dapatkan inspirasi atau perspektif ini dari belajar ketika kita mendatangi Wisma Kuira karya Romo Mangun di Kejayaan.
Right. The second is how to share knowledge not only to the upper class people, but also to the middle class and below. This thing I learned from his masterpiece from Mr. Romo Mangunwijaya in Wisma Kuwira in Kejayaan Street.
Yang perspektif ketiga ini cukup penting dan ini cukup merubah perjalanan arsitektur saya ketika saya mencoba memulai profesi sebagai arsitek. Jadi apa yang dilakukan Romo Mangun di Kampung Code sehingga kampung ini kemudian dipakai sebagai alat untuk melakukan advokasi dan pembelaan kepada yang miskin, dan disitulah kemudian kita ingin menciptakan sebuah keadilan sosial bagi masyarakat secara luas. Itu sangat kuat sekali saya pelajari dari karya Romo Mangun di Code yang akhirnya kemudian mendapat Aga Khan Award internasional.
Right. So the third perspective, which is really important, that also changed the path of my architecture as well, is his did in Chode River, where we wanted to bring justice for everyone, which was so amazing. Also got the award from the international.
Ya, itu tiga perspektif itu yang kemudian melatar belakang saya untuk memberanikan kemudian masuk ke lingkungan yang lebih luas, yang lebih menantang, yang sekarang ini sebenarnya kita hadapi, bahwa di dunia global kita kemudian menghadapi bahwa apa yang ditunjukkan Romo Mangun di buku Wastu Citra dan karyanya yang di Code itu membukakan mata kita bahwa dunia sedang gelisah. Bahkan 15.000 global scientist sudah mewarning kita bahwa ini akan ada penderitaan yang tidak terhingga jika kita tidak bisa menangani ketidakadilan, terutama untuk yang miskin ini. Nah, arsitek ada di mana? Ini Romo Mangun sebenarnya sudah sangat memberikan pesan cukup kuat terhadap isu ini.
Right, those are the three backgrounds for me to strive more to fight on the global world of architecture. Also, one of his books showed the concerning issue related to the poor people or the marginal society, so that we can concern about that more.
Ya, ini yang sebenarnya kita hadapi sekarang, bahwa 60% penduduk dunia ada di perkotaan, dan 1 dari 3 orang yang ada di kota itu sebenarnya tinggal di pemukiman miskin seperti yang dikatakan di datanya UN di PBB.
Right. So today we are facing like 60% of the populations live in cities, and 1 from or out of 3 people live under the poor society or poor area of the city.
Ya, ini yang menjadi tantangan kita semua, bahwa we have facing this. Saya campur-campur nggak apa ya Mas, nanti kalau
Sure,
misalnya saya butuh translate bahwa now we facing with unequal justice in the city. Poor people every day, maybe every year, affected by top-down policy, and I think this is Romo Mangun already mentioned, and how we can support them, how we can support community, the poor people, by the architecture that we got from the university. This is, I think, the very important message that already mentioned by Father Mangunwijaya. Next. So I think important for architects reflecting about what is the architecture. Architects, that's why I and many young architects try to define that architects is want to dream changing of system, reforming the perception and practices, and we are want to contribute more fundamental aspect about the social justice and it is where exists in Indonesia. I think this is a very relevant issues that Mangun Wijaya said 25 or 30 years ago. Next. That's why after I graduated from the university 2001, and I tried to come to the informal kampung in some cities in Indonesia, and then after the tsunami in Aceh, we try to establish the organization, call it Arkom Indonesia, that until now we still exist and work with many communities and also in the some architects in ASEAN level, in regional level, with a similar vision and transforming our knowledge, and also learning from the community, from the poor people, and we try to make this as a movement. We call it the Community Architects Network. Yeah, now in Indonesia, you can see in the slides that we working in the coalition with many organizations in some cities, and also some of these organizations also architects based, the professional based organization, and also working with the people, poor people in 5 provinces in Indonesia with many households. Like in Lampung province, we work with more than 300 households, and in Banten, in Jawa Timur, to promoting how we can engage community to design to improve their quality of life by architecture. Yeah, we have 3 action that we do in each city that before we come to the design process. The first action, we call it community mapping. This mapping is the process that we create a dialogue and understanding between architects, between from outsider professional to the people. It is important step that we building trust to the community. This process is we use like simple tools how community can engage and working with us and with to create a common awareness about what is the potential things in the community, what is the problem, and then we analyze together in the circle, and then to build common understanding about the 3 important aspects, about the physical, environmental, social, and economic aspect. Next. The second action, we call it, this is the sample how community can engage on the in the beginning process, creating a beautiful drawing in the settlement, in the community, in the kampung. Very beautiful data that we can that we got by this method, and then they are happy. This is our data, and we call it this is a third place as a spatial data. By gathering, sharing, learning each other, and make a simple consensus by cutting piece of paper, coloring, drawing. It's a tool that we use because community poor people is very familiar with these tools, and then can participate and engage in this process. Second action, we call it community planning and design. Yeah, this is the second phase that after community can bring the data, the drawing, the problems, the potential things in the community, and then we come to the process how to create a solution about housing, about the infrastructure, about the economic aspect, something like that. And then we use also catering process and very informal process, very different with if we use like a focus discussion group or workshop. This is a very informal process in the community that we manage how community can still engage in its process, and they are happy. It is a part of process to manage the ownership. Yeah, planning and design something concrete according the needs of community and strengthen the spirit of togetherness, and also sharing knowledge each other from architects to community and community to architects, also sharing their perspective, their knowledge about the kampung. This is very important process, I think, to build a relationship between us as an architect and the community, that before they have a stigma, but they are poor, very stupid, and etc. Action number 3 is implementation by community or community implementation. This is again, we manage a gathering, how community can participate by simple technology, by simple works that actually that is as a like local wisdom exists in the kampung. It is important as a spirit. We call it spirit of gotong royong. Actually, it's important to build and as a like a small winner for winning from the community. Involving the poor on construction is actually is not only building the house physically, tetapi this is also how we can create a new opportunity for economic aspect for the community. This is Father Mangunwijaya also mentioned this aspect is very important. How we aware to the community, because they need a work, they need jobs. So if all jobs come from outside, they just as like an object. We want to make a community as a subject on the construction, so we can create a small business during the construction process. This is very important things. Yeah, I have some practices that we can see how this method, how this tools can exist and community can engage. First is this come from Surakarta, 2015. We working with a poor community along the riverside. Next, along the PP riverside, we work with 22 kampungs. Grouping in 3 zones. Zone first by consists of 3 kampung and etc. Next, and this is the how we implementing the 3 action. First, by mapping, you can see how a community can identify one by one the houses exist along the riverside that it will affected by government because the regulation is not compromised, and government want to relocate people to the rumah susun. Rumah susun is a government vertical housing, social housing, but the typology is very not accepted by community. So we want to try to make a alternative solution from community sides and negotiate with the government. This first process, the mapping. Next, and then after the mapping, they have done the mapping. The result are presented to the mayor, and the mayor also we negotiate to the mayor as a part to bridging the process, and government also very open with with the community because they have a new perspective. Involving community in the master plan in the planning process is very important. Not used by top-down process, because before government use top-down process to want to relocate people, but people rejected the plan. This is the next step. Community, we work together again in the community level to create a planning design, how community can understand about the skills, about the regulation, how can people create the games that one by one household can negotiate by themselves. Architect is facilitating this process, and then from the limited space exists in the riverside, we can replanning by reblocking and then create row houses in this area. Yeah, this a similar process from the design. This a very interested process for me, because I also learn about the social aspect, about the cultural aspect, from the community side, and also architects only playing the rules as a facilitator, not come to the design and just sharing or consulting the people, but we are building new knowledge with the access information about the advantages and disadvantages, and guiding the community to dare and make the right decision. And this is the important thing, that we try to change the system before the decision come from the government, and now we facilitating the people to speak up and can make a right decision collectively. This and come to the government, negotiate, and then change the policy. This is the mission. Next. Yeah, and then the second phase is after the decision come from the community, very basic, and then architects and drafting the concept and make details as a architectural drawing, and then negotiate with the government to propose this project as a pilot. And this is the result, and call it Rumah Renteng Keprabon, the vertical kampung is the one important result, and change the system in the city level. The regulation change before they want to evict the community, and then now community still exists there, but they move back 3 meters from the riverside, and this is 100%. The budget come from the government, and community still as a contribute in the process until the finish the construction for the quality aspect of material. This is done in 2015. Next, this is another case in Yogyakarta, 2017. This is another case that poor people in Yogyakarta downtown cities, downtown area want to evict it by hotel development. This is the issue, that 50 families, one neighbors living in one piece of land, I call it Ngindung. This is like a informal rental land in Yogyakarta, call it Ngindung land, and then they already exist maybe since 50 years ago, and by these years the landlord want to sell the land to the investor to build 4 stars hotel. Now the hotel is already exist. and 50 families means that they are evicted. So they don't have a house anymore, and then just rent, and it become the they already poor and now become the very very poor by this scheme of the development. Next, we facilitating this process. Same with the same process, and then we collecting saving group, make a saving group, and then they buy piece of land in another site that they looking for the land in, I think, 5 kilometers from the city center. They have a land, and then we try to make set planning, and then we try to imagine by community make a small simple design like a house plan, what they want by its family, and then we consolidate this design into 3 types of housing design from come from 50 families, all drawn by people, and then they're presenting one by one. This is my house, like this room, and we need like a small shop in front of, and then we consolidate, and we have 3 types of design. This is the how we facilitating this process with the people, and then community also, we makes symbol tools, paper and stickers, and they make the house design by the prototype by 3D models by themselves. And this is a very important process to build ownership. So they, at the end, they are very happy because people show that, oh, actually we can design our houses. This is a very very happiness process that we want to make people happy collectively, and the knowledge is shared to the community. Next. Yeah, is the, and then they make another a solution to make a row house by 2-story houses, and propose to the government. But this process is still stopped because still need advocacy in national level, is a part of the collective housing coalition by some NGO to change the policy in national level. This third practices from Central Sulawesi after the tsunami and earthquake, and this project is also, we got the World Habitat Award by Bronze Award. This process is actually similar process, and also but very different context because it's a post disaster. Yeah, this is the concept. We want to bridging the gap. Always government have a top-down policy, but the people always have a local demand. It is related with the jobs, the livelihood from the near the coastal area, because this community, this poor people, is a fisherman. Government want to relocate fishermen to the hill area, 5 kilometers far from the coastal, but people want to stay in the near the coastal because the jobs, the daily activity is related with the sea. We negotiate this by same process, identification the problems, identification the needs by mapping, and then also this is a part of our method works is a trauma healing. Engaged community is a trauma healing because after the shock, after the disaster shock, they have a trauma. They lost everything, anything that we want to build again the spirit of life, togetherness, social value, in this phase, in the emergency process. So that's why important to engage community in this process. Yeah, this is the process. If a government said that 100 meters is a red zone, no one people can build again the houses, the settlement. But why the government have a solution in 5 kilometers? This is our discussion with community. It means that actually if we can get the land 101 meters from the coastal, from the coastal line, it is green, or it means it's not red anymore. So we organize the community and looking for the new land can accommodate I think 50 families to reject the 5 kilometers, and we want to make a nearby relocation, and community get the land in 200 meters from the coastal, and we try to make a simulation in with some planning, some design, but we want to community want to make like a village vision. So we working also with some expert like a gender expert, use gender action learning system to engage the women, the mothers, and also the young people in this process. It is very important process, and they can build again like a social value, the spirit of to continue their life as a survivor, and then negotiate this proposal to the government. Yes, this is the planning process to make a mitigation aspect in this kampung, because the mitigation aspect is very important to aware for the next disaster, because this area is very prone. Yeah, and then similar with another case, consolidating the house design from each family, and we try to know the local wisdom about the architecture, and then we know that we can have a consensus with 4 types of houses, that if the houses is close from the coastal, from the sea, it means that they want to build state houses, like we'll call it rumah panggung, and then far from the sea, they want to make grounded houses. This like a simple get land to build, and then also earthquake resistant housing is very important. Yeah, this is and then the next phase is how we discuss with community collectively to looking for a new scheme of funding, how make a collaboration funding, because many NGOs come to the Central Sulawesi as a donor, and then government also have a funding. How we can mix the co-funding between the government, community, and also international agency. And also livelihood aspect is important. This is an opportunity to create a new jobs for the community. So that's why we create a new job, and this is a continue until now. People, community have a new job, and they have a additional income by this way. Not only get the houses, but also get the income from this process. And this is the impact. We define the impact in 2 levels. In the community level, the change is about the decision-making process, about the equality, and the community entrepreneur have a long-term impact about we call it, they have like a prefabricated concrete panel workshop, and more than 1,000 or 3,000 houses will build in Palu, in Sulawesi, and then anyone want to by this panel can come to the community. And also the ownership. The ownership is very exist, and community can protect and maintain the houses until now. In the government level, we can change the policy. Before, government only have one scheme for the relocation, and after this scheme, we call it relokasi mandiri kelompok, community relocation collective relocation scheme, and then World Bank have a new program, CSRRP program for the 3,000 families by same schemes that we promoted. And then also the sustainability aspect for livelihood. It is the last slides that I want to share as a reflection that this is I rewrite from the Wastu Citra books from at the last page of I think this is important books from Father Mangunwijaya that say that how the essence of aesthetic meaning will not be extracted from the mere superficial things, but must be distilled from the deep understanding of the true reality. It is very important. For beauty is the brilliance of truth, right for its time and right for its place. Yeah, this is a very important that we want by this process, by engage community. Actually, we want to make a community happy, and the social justice we can contribute by social justice. I think this I share to you, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yuli Kusworo, Pak Yuli, for sharing all the inspiration with us. I think Mr. Yuli Kusworo here is not only taking several perspectives from what is architecture according to Romo Mangunwijaya, but he also apply every single principle of it in all his community-based work. And hopefully it's not just interesting for us, but it's also very valuable, and also hopefully it will spark some inspiration for all the participants of our workshop next month. And before we continue to our Q&A session, and also I will invite some of the master unit to share their insight. I would like to invite all of you to take a photo together with our speaker today, Mr. Yuli Kusworo. Now we have one question here. We have Mr. Paulus Baule already raised his hand. Hello, Mr. Paulus. Thank you so much for your attention. I would like to invite Bapak Paulus Baule first, to deliver your question. You may deliver the question in English, or if we can translate for you, we will be happy to do so. Please, Pak Paulus Baule.
Thank you so much. So I think this is international. Maybe I speak Indonesian better, because
Sure.
Artinya I would like to thank you so much for the lecture given by Mas Yuli. This is very valuable for all of us. This is a very good example about how to implement the knowledge that we learn from our maestro Romo Mangunwijaya. Ya, jadi terima kasih Mas Yuli sudah memberikan pencerahan buat kita semua. Saya senang tadi mulai dari proses awal yang diberikan, bagaimana masyarakat mulai dari kampung yang jelas bekerja untuk masyarakat marginal, baik di kota maupun di desa yang terutama yang terkena bencana tadi, yang bagian terakhir di Palu. Nah, prosesnya sudah jelas sangat menarik, mulai dari basic menstimulan masyarakat berpikir untuk mengembangkan ide mereka untuk membangun rumah mereka. Kemudian step by step pada proses perencanaan yang diberikan tadi itu ada aspek empowering, aspek pemberdayaan yang diberikan pada Arkom, pada Mas Yuli dan tim, pada masyarakat, sehingga masyarakat itu mengerti cara membangun rumah. Walaupun mereka bukan arsitek, tapi mereka mengerti cara membangun rumah. Pembelajaran yang paling baik. Karena banyak sekali kita sebagai arsitek berpikir bahwa kita yang tahu untuk membangun permukiman mereka, padahal mereka yang tinggal di situ yang lebih tahu. Nah, yang mau saya tanyakan di sini adalah bagaimana Arkom, Mas Yuli dan teman-teman untuk menjaga sustenabilitas atau keberlanjutan dari proses ini. Karena beberapa program yang dilakukan dengan proses yang mungkin hampir sama dilakukan oleh pemerintah juga, itu pemerintah hanya bekerja, setelah selesai mereka pindah ke tempat lain, dan ini mereka diharapkan mereka bekerja sendiri. Nah, padahal setelah mereka mengembangkan sendiri, hasilnya itu kira-kira 1-2 tahun atau 5 tahun berikutnya itu sudah dipastikan kualitasnya akan menjadi lebih buruk lagi. Nah, ini yang saya mau menanyakan ke Mas Yuli dan teman-teman, itu bagaimana kita menjaga supaya knowledge atau pengetahuan, so every knowledge that we transfer from us to the community, we have to keep it to them so that mereka dapat mengembangkan permukiman mereka sendiri yang terus berkelanjutan, tidak menjadi semakin buruk. Nah, prosesnya sudah bagus sampai terjadi bagus, tapi bagaimana menjaga maintenance, bagaimana memelihara mereka untuk lingkungan maupun livelihood, kehidupan mereka sehari-hari. Kalau rumahnya udah dibangunin bagus, tapi kalau livelihood-nya tidak bisa dipertahankan dengan meningkat, otomatis akan terjadi lagi degradasi. Nah, ini pengalaman beberapa melihat di program yang dilakukan oleh pemerintah ya, dan juga NGO yang lain, ya, LSM yang lain. Nah, mungkin Mas Yuli bisa kasih tip buat kita semua supaya kita yang memang hobinya ngobok-ngobok, hobinya memprovokatori masyarakat untuk membangun wilayah sendiri, membangun dengan dayanya sendiri, itu kita dapat terus mempertahankan pembangunan yang sudah dilakukan. Mungkin itu Mbak moderator dan Mas Yuli yang mungkin saya mudah-mudahan bisa memberikan pencerahan. Terima kasih. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pak Paulus Paule, for the question. And before Pak Yuli give his response, please, Mr. Cahyo, kindly give a general translation for Mr. Paulus Paule's question. Please, Mr. Cahyo.
Sorry, so in the beginning, Mr. Paulus was thanking Mr. Yuli for the enlightening lecture, about Mr. Mangunwijaya work and the implementation and the building process. So the question is how Arkom, the organization that Mas Yuli in, and how Mr. Yuli and friends maintain the sustainability of the process. So quite similar to what the government did. So they just build something and then they leave the building, and then the society cannot continue the process. And then that's actually the general question, is how we maintain and keep the knowledge sustained. Please also consider the livelihood and the environment. As example, based on the experience, as I mentioned earlier, from the government and other NGO as well. So please give us the the way how to maintain that. So for us who play the roles of supporting or promoting the society to let's build something, but then we have no idea how to sustain or maintain the knowledge and skills we have given to the society. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cahyo. Now I would like to invite Pak Yuli to give your response, Pak Yuli. Kami persilakan untuk menjawab Pak Paulus.
Thank you, Father Paulus, for your question. Very important. It is, yeah, always this question is challenging because every session that I share, this question is always asked to me to ask about this how we can maintain the next or the sustainability after the development, the construction is done. This is my opinion that we also part of our responsibility. First is our goals is not to build physical things. This is not the goals. The goals is by if you want to engage a community, the goal is empower the people. The goal is the knowledge is exists and transfer from us to the community collectively. So by this vision, we try to create something method that we call it community organizing, not community development, because the community organizing is beyond the community development. So it means that we build the mechanism in the community for long term. So it means that why collective work is a very important. So that's why at the beginning, the all process, all action that I shared actually is a part to build awareness, part to build ownership, and part to build a mechanism, community mechanism, and including the funding, the finance, the scheme, the organization is also a part of the process. And architecture only one aspect to build as a small aspect or small oh, I can do this. This only like a pathway. We build a pathway, the long-term pathway and short-term pathway. The short-term is the milestone is oh, the houses is done, or we can build a community center, we can build the infrastructure, but actually they want to maintain, and by organization they have a funding, by community fund they can maintain by long term. This is one example that 2005 until 2007 we working in Aceh in 23 villages, 3,000 houses, including the infrastructure, is built by community process, and the organization is also built. And then 10 years later, I came to evaluate what is the success story in 2007 still exists or maintained by community or not. And the final result of my evaluation, and also that is I come with some journalists from Germany, and they are very happy. They are very protect and very maintain about the knowledge how to build a house resistant housing, house resistant, and how to manage like mangrove as to protect their coastal area, and then they manage the disaster preparedness team. Every year they will have like a preparedness drill, and this is very important thing that by this process people happy, and then knowledge come to the community. They maintain collectively because they have organization, they have a funding by themselves, by community saving group, and they can create like and maintain their knowledge. This is a Paulus that the like a scheme or tips that that's why we call it a community organizing, not community development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yuli, Mr. Yuli, for sharing the tips with us about community organizing, not development, yeah. So it's two different thing and two different strategies. Okay, next, we have 3 questions already from the participant in the comment sections, but we also have a discussion here from our workshop master, unit master. We have Dr. Parisa from Rangsit University, and later we will have also Mr. Wisnu from Gajah Mada University. Okay, now I will invite Dr. Parisa to give some insight about the topic. Hello, Dr. Parisa.
Okay, thank you very much for the very good insight information about the community engagement and the participatory design process that you have done in your work. I have a small question about this kind of work in Indonesia. I don't know how much of young architects who interest in this kind of the community engagement, and how can you bring the young architect who, when you are in architect school, you believe that when you graduate you will design some beautiful building, but this is not the normal one that we teach in architectural school. So how much of young architects who interest in this kind of work, and how you bring them into the field, and how they get the money, to earn for their living and do this kind of a very great job in your country.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Parisa. That's a very interesting issue in our architecture school. And Pak Yuli, would you like to answer directly? Mau langsung memberikan jawaban?
Yeah, thank you, Ms.
Silakan.
Parisa, for your question. This is also important question that come to me when you talk about relate with the education in architecture schools. First, if you ask about the number, this actually the number is very small compared with all graduated or junior architects or fresh graduate architects from the schools. I think the number is small. So, but we have a strategy because ARCOM try to share this knowledge, this method, these skills, because we combine with soft skills, how to engage community. This is a soft skills that we never, I think only some university or architecture department also have this mata kuliah itu apa? This
Subject.
Yeah. The subject is only some university, but we try to promoting, because this is very important. Because the fresh graduate, when they come to the community, they don't have approach for the community. So sometimes we come to the university and make a short training about the community engagement, about the some soft skill, and then it is influencing for some fresh graduate. And then second, we maintain the networks, international networks. We have a Indonesia Community Architects Network. So we share we have like work together from one city to another city by annual event, like a workshop together with a case, a real case in one city. We manage this, and also we share in the regional level in Asia, like friends in India, in Thailand, in Philippines also, and also in some city like in Nepal or in Bangladesh. I think this is important. And then we produce this our knowledge by our practice into the website, so everyone can download by these tools by Gatland, and then they can do this process by themselves. So this is our process, how we share our knowledge regarding our practice in the ground. And third, about how we can get the funding to manage this process. Actually, we work together with government. Also, some government fund can come to us, and then we manage this. And also, we work with some big foundation, like a CSR from the big company. They have many opportunities that we can propose to them. So we have funding, and then we can create for training, for workshop, and then also for create a model or prototype in some cities and negotiate with government. I think this is the process that we can get. But if we this is part of how we can share and influence the young architects. Know that this issue is very important. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Pak Yuli, Mr. Yuli, for sharing the strategy of inviting the young architect, and of course, try to involve this in architecture education, even though it's not totally in a formal way, but yeah, we can find some ways to introduce that. Okay, next we have, I would like to invite Unit Master from Gadjah Mada University. We have Mr. Wisnu with us. Hello, Pak Wisnu.
Hello, can you hear my voice? Hello.
Okay.
Can you hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear you clearly.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us, Pak Wisnu, and I would like to invite you to give your insight or discussion related to Pak Yuli's lecture. Please, Pak Wisnu.
Thank you so much, Bu Johanita. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Pak Yuli. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation that you have. And yeah, perhaps a little bit of the context. I've been following Pak Yuli's work since the time, perhaps in 2015, when Pak Yuli came to our school and told the story about the way he worked for the victim of the tsunami earthquake in Aceh in 2004, if I'm not mistaken. And wow, it's really an amazing opportunity to learn a lot of your work, Pak Yuli. So thank you so much for sharing to us. And yeah, I'm pretty much impressed by the way we can try to incorporate more involvement from the community rather than just a top-down process from the architect itself. And yeah, this brings us to the sense that the design can also be achieved through a more democratized process. Like, you know, people get involved and participate in a lot part of this design process. And it gives a lot of new insight on how this process can be achieved and what will be beneficial to the context of sustainability itself. And yeah, I think this is an amazing thing that is being shared, and thank you so much for sharing to us. One thing that I would like to also bring to the table for the discussion is about the perhaps about the time, maybe, because we also tried to do this kind of community-based approach by Yuli several times, actually, from our department. But the way is that because oftentimes in the project, we also have the constraint about the time, how long this process should take, you know. sometimes it needs to be finished within a year or another 2 years. But it's not forever. But the problem is that sometimes when we get involved with the community, the process is not really straightforward. Sometimes it becomes like an iterative process. We need to go back and forth. We need to just repeat it again. Sometimes we just had discussion before, and we need to reiterate this discussion again. And sometimes it's just somewhat demanding in a sense. And yeah, I would like to learn more, Pak Yuli, actually, from Pak Yuli, or perhaps if anyone, if there you are having an insight for this, how did you manage to do this project within the given timeline? How did you manage to make this project be finished within the predefined amount of time? Did you ever have any experience from the project being late because of some things that is unexpectedly happened during the process? Or perhaps you can share with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pak Wisnu. And Pak Yuli, would you like to give your response to this?
Yeah, thank you, Pak Wisnu, for your insight and the question. Difficult question to ask because, in its project actually is very different context. I think Aceh is very, very, for me, is this very the hardest process because this I am working first time in the situation is very, very bad. Yeah, in the situation is very bad, and we never know about the tsunami before. What is tsunami? We don't know about the disaster. We know disaster only about the earthquake, eruption, volcanic eruption, something like that. And 2004 we have tsunami. When we come there, and I come, I think 2 weeks after the tsunami, after the shocks, and I just visit in the ground zero of tsunami, and I learned what I must do here as architect because no one everything there. I just thinking because 100,000 people is dead. Yeah. And no one, it's a empty land with everything is gone. So it is a very important process that so I learned a lot in this process. But when we talk about the participatory process, sometimes we already have like a negative mindset about wasting time because the process to engage is need time is a very, very, very long time. So, but at the beginning, like in Aceh, the process to engage at the first time to building trust is very important to the next step to accelerate the next process that I share. The first action is community mapping is the first process that maybe need a longer time than next step for design and planning. In Aceh, we have 3 months for engagement process to building trust because Aceh is also have a stigma. Acehnese people is have a bad stigma to the Javanese people like me. Oh, you from Java, you want to you a part of Suharto. Because peoples in Aceh is everything is bad by Javanese people. This is a distrust. So how can make a process to make a building trust? This we have 3 months. Yeah, this is not a romantic process. Yeah, participatory. Yeah, you are right, Pak Wisnu. It's a very hard, and then also we working with Aceh Kombatan also. So they are also who are you? Or maybe you want as a like something like that. Now this I learned a lot about how we must understand the local people. And we have 3 months to learn, understand what the local context. This is very important. And this process is a more social political way that we come approach and blending to the community. This is a very to make the gap between outsider and local people is come together. This is the trust process, trust building. Yeah, so that's why this process is more longer, three months. After that is the process is more to make planning is 2 months, to design only 2 weeks, and then after that for construction we built 3,300 houses in 2021, 100% built by community, only 17 months. This is the very fast process because we do share the knowledge and people want to, I want faster because knowledge already there. So that's the scheme. And next, this is all by without government intervention because we're fighting with government in Aceh. And government come to Aceh is I think 6 months after the tsunami. So they are very confused what we will do. And then people already built the model house. This is a very interesting process. And the next process we learn, and then we have our rules, and then we know maybe in the normal situation we can more simple because we just keep the principal process like how to building trust, how to make a mapping, and then how to make a planning design. And like in Solo 2015, we come to the people only 1 month to building trust, and then second month we make a mapping and then planning design done in 3 months, and then until the concept of basic design of the community settlement done in first year. Second years government already make a budget to implementing by contractor and community as a part of the tim pengawas pembangunan, ya. Supervisor, construction supervisor to as a quality controls part of the government. It's only 2 years as the construction is done, and then we make organization, the cooperative organization to maintain after the construction, something like that, Mas Wisnu, that I can share. So actually we just want, from project to another project, we very learn, and we just keep the principle how to build the trust to the community. We know the local context, the challenge about the political issues on the ground. Sometimes we meet the preman, something like that. Thank you.
Did you make some kind of timeline or design what would you do for this particular project before you actually go into action? Or did you just go, just go to the site and then decide everything based on what we see in the field? Which one did you choose, Yuli?
Yeah, internally as a team, as a facilitator team, architects team, we have a time frame. We have a roadmap, but these are very flexible that we work because we know that by this assessment, maybe like in Palu, we have a project until the project finish is 2 years. At the beginning, we already have, because we have we can make a project planning for 2 years, working in 5 communities, and we want to build 500 houses by this scheme. We already have that plan, but at the implementation process, this project done by 18 months because the acceleration is at the second phase after the mapping process. The building trust process is done by community, and then community want to make acceleration. So the time frame after the community can negotiate, etc. They want to make new time frame based on their spirit. I want this more faster, something like that. We just follow the community ways. This is a very interesting process, I think. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, I think one thing that I'd like to emphasize in here is the fact that sometimes in the modern construction paradigm, we oftentimes need to determine everything at first before the project even started. And this approach is because there are some rooms for flexibility. I think this part would be interesting to learn for us, so that what if this could also be applied to the modern context of paradigm. So thank you so much, Pak Yul, again for sharing with us. I will return back to you, Bu Jo. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pak Wisnu. Very interesting discussion. And thanks, Pak Yuli, also for the response. Now we have several questions in the chat box. So I will read the question one by one, and hopefully Pak Yuli can give response, even though a concise one, because we still have more or less 30 minutes. In the first question from Ashifa Aisha, thank you very much for the insightful presentation, Pak Yuli. I would like to ask, what are the common challenges faced when trying to engage with the community in the architectural projects and after the projects in terms of maintenance, and how can we mitigate that? Okay, Pak Yuli, please.
Yeah, thank you to Asifa for your question. First about the common challenge. Yeah, common challenge ini this common challenge. I think the most important is change the mindset, because now the poor people, the community is already has the exist mindset that it is a part of the top-down process from the government. This process is change the mindset from the community. This is a very important. When we come to the community first time, they already ask, this process is very hard. Your process is very hard, because without your process, government come and the project is done by contractor. Change this mindset to participate by step is from the person to the group, to the small group, and then we make a larger group. This is the challenge, because community already have a exist mindset about another mindset that already exists. Government by this just one time consultation, by big consultation, and then after that project is come, and also the aid from the government also come. Why ARCOM or my approach is very difficult. Many time to community meeting, something like that. It's a meeting and meeting and meeting. Every day is meeting with Yuli, with ARCOM. This sometimes this is very challenge, but this is okay. But we try to keep. We call it community champion. Community champion is not community leader, formal community leader. We're looking for another formal community leader, means like a Pak RT or a village leader, Pak Lurah, Pak RW. This is not part of our process, because we come to the very grassroots, that before they don't want to ask in the forum, in the meeting. They just keep silent, but actually in terms of the informality, actually they have a leader, but we don't know. We're looking for the leader. If we keep the leader, and then they can engage another community member. This is a process that we can mitigate. If we can find the local champion come from the community, it can help us like a co-facilitator, and they actually working as a and the step we upgrade the inner leader from them, and they can influence the community. This I think the important thing that I can share to Mbak Asifa as your question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Yuli. So, local champion ya.
Yeah.
Local influencer, very interesting. Okay, the next one is from Mr. Agus Tridiatno. Very good sharing about community engagement in architecture. My comments or question, there are many disasters in Indonesia. Oh, and in many places or areas. Yeah, right. How can you cover these areas of disaster? Or how you select which areas or communities you will support or advocate? Okay, please, Pak Yuli, you may
Yeah.
respond to this.
Actually, yeah, thank you, Pak Agus. Actually, this question to the government because this is a government responsibility. Yeah, I think our responsibility as architects is how we can create a new way to make people like a democratic way to people can engage, and then this process can influence the government. So that's why in its disaster reconstruction, we only create one area that very prone, and this is this area is most affected area by the disaster, the natural disaster like tsunami, like volcanic eruption, or another disaster. We come to the most affected area because after the disaster, government have like rules to create a new regulation, new spatial planning. It will the planning from the government is not consulted by a community, just top down, come from the Jakarta, and then we will protect the people from the next disaster. Also, then we want to relocate people. We want we working with this. So that's why I said in the title is we working with millions left behind. Yeah, they don't have access to negotiate, so we working with them. This is the criteria that we work with. So like in Aceh, we work with in the ground zero because government want to evict fishermen there. And then also in Merapi, we work with people in the nearest the slope of Merapi, 4 kilometers from the crater. And also in Palu, also in the poor people, local people, they want to living in the close with the sea because they are the traditional fishermen, something like that. That is poor people. And also the community in the urban area, like slum area, they also affected by capitalism, by top down policy, and they don't have a scheme how to engage the community. We facilitate this. We come to the community, but we also come to the government. We bridging this. I think this is that I can share how we select which community that we work. Thank you, Pak Agus.
Okay, so the aim is not to cover all the disaster area in Indonesia, but to ignite or to provoke the government to do some initiative in that area. Okay, next question from Lydia Raihana Andini. Good afternoon. Thank you for the inspiring presentation. Seeing the community engagement process that you have carried out, I feel that it is something new and extraordinary effort. Therefore, I was curious that in the process, the number of people who participated was not small, and it was possible that they also had different views. If there are conflicting ideas between them, how did you manage all aspiration and consideration to be accommodated so that everyone still in the same intention? Okay, very interesting question. Please, Pak Yuli.
Thank you, Bu Lydia. This is a part of the organizing process. This is for me, I learned a lot from Romomangun, how Romomangun also try to negotiate and provoking the community with different ideas, and then they can consolidate, and Romomangun can consolidate with as a collective idea. This is a very important from the 1, 2 until the 1 neighbors, 1 kampung. How is the process? What is the conflict? The conflict is a very big conflict because every family, every person have interesting. So that's why we come to building trust, because we make like a criteria, we make the vision. Vision is number 1 that we built. What is the vision? And then vision come to the like a roadmap. What is the we can implement it by important by short way of people. And then this is a part of the creative process in the mapping. So that's why we know that if we just talk to the community by between architects and a community, sometimes we'll deadlock. So that's why we come to the local champion. So the local champion will, if the local champion can understand what we want, they can share to the member. So like a bridging, and then we can make a like a bigger meeting to make a consolidation and to make a consensus from the community, one by one. This is the process. That's why we always not come to the community in the meeting, but at the beginning we always what we call it, living in the community to make the discussion not only in the meeting, but we come to the community. I living in the one house and then come to another house. So this is a process like building trust, and this approach is a very social way, something like that.
Okay, so that's the importance of trust building, and even sometimes we need to live in the community, just as like Romomangun did in his life.
Correct.
Okay, next question will be from Kirana Zafirah Maheswari. Thank you for your insightful presentation. It is an interesting topic to share. I would like to ask, how can we balance design innovation in solving issues with preserving cultural values and local community needs in the community engagement process in architectural design? Okay, please, Pak Yuli.
When we choose participatory process, we must downgrade the meaning of innovation. So because the community actually already many innovation, but the architectural things maybe not exist because they don't know about the architecture, but they have many innovation, small innovation. But this is we can connecting with the people by the design process. Like my experience, like in Aceh or in Palu, when we ask about the design houses, first time community want to grounded houses, because the grounded houses is the social stigma as I'm not poor anymore if I have grounded houses, permanent houses built by brick and concrete. This is the stigma. If I build the wooden houses, this is a poor. They don't want to as a poor anymore. So everyone always want to make grounded houses, but we have responsibility about the issue about this area is very prone. So if we will talk about the still houses, it means that traditional. Still houses is traditional. They don't want. So we negotiate long time and yeah, sometimes deadlock again. So okay, in community deadlock and we come to the another community. Is the one community they innovation and they agree with this issue, they accommodate about the how make a small innovation about the stairs, about the ornament traditional, something like that. Okay, we make this as a model, implemented faster, and then by this model will influence another community. Oh, that's good. I want like that. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we makes yeah creative way that to negotiate with the people when by the meeting is deadlocked. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so basically you will need some strategies. So your new technology that you want to introduce or the new innovation can be accepted by them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe you
yeah,
need to change the communities, and the one community will influence the other to accept the new technology, or just use the old one, but with some adjustment so they can still get involved, I think. Okay, next is from Anggita F. Marcelina. Oh, sorry, from Arinta Aska Hierarchy first. Okay. Peace be upon you. Your presentation was very insightful. I would like to ask about the religious communities involved. Is there a tendency for the religious communities to align with the faith practiced by Mangunwijaya, or how are the dynamics? How are the dynamics? Sorry. Additionally, how significant is their influence on Mangunwijaya's project? Okay.
yeah.
So,
For my experience, I think like in Aceh, yeah, in Aceh, so they are very religious people. But my team sometimes come from the different religious also. It is very difficult to come and then, yeah, preaching the process. And sometimes, yeah, we need like a negotiators. So that's why we never come to the community personally. We always as a team. Maybe I have like a soft skill to engage the women. Sometimes my team can engage the uh, religious leader in the community. Sometimes my teams have expertise to engage yeah the men in the community. So this is we try to capture the social political aspect. So that's why we try to reduce the risk that we come to the community, like yeah, religious issue to reject. Oh, we don't want the non-Muslim people come to our community, something like that. Yeah, but it is like in Solo, we come to the very extreme community, like yeah, with Chadar, and yeah, very difficult to come because when they looking outsider, they're already there. They're like yeah, they don't want to yeah. The problem is to building trust. This is some. Do you need new way, new method, uh, new strategy to come enter with who? Sometimes we yeah come to the another friends that they like closely from this organization or this religion, and then approach by themselves.
I think that's I can share as yeah, based on my experience. But and also the last question about the
yeah, I think
housing.
the last question, yeah, from Anggita F. Marcelina from UI, Universitas Indonesia. I was interested in the initial explanation regarding how architecture must also accommodate nature and increase its dignity, not colonize it, because nature is the mother of to all of us. How does the community consolidate this? How nature accommodated in the project described earlier? Is there a way from Mr. Eko Prawoto or Mr. Mangunwijaya or you and the community to make these considerations? So how does this relate to the design? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If we talk about this is like a ecological approach, and now we call it like a nature-based solutions with a simple way, with the community ways, like we choose materials come from to the community. It means that like bamboo, reuse or recycle wood, and also something local technologies about how to make beautiful stones for the pathway, something like that. This we try to capture and how people can proud by this process, because this is their knowledge, because this is their innovation, come to the nature, come to the local material. But sometimes also we mix by a modern way, but we try to reduce, because our goals is a simple community to maintain in long term. If we use the modern way or modern material, maybe after the project is done, maybe community cannot maintain, because this is very difficult to maintain, something like that. So we try to identify at the first step what is the material can use or can find in this community or close from the community, like bamboo, stones, or sometimes recycle roof, something like that. So we use this as a part of our responsibility to create the like maybe this way is like we try to implementing to reduce carbon footprint by recycle material, and then the goal is a community can maintain, because they have local knowledge how to maintain this material in the design, in the building.
Okay, so in short, usually your approach of using natural material is in line with the knowledge that the community already has and apply, because the aim is to make it sustainable. So it's better to promote their local material, natural material. It will be easier for them to maintain the technology or the architecture that has been introduced to them. Okay, and actually we still have one more question about Wastu Citra, but unfortunately our time is up now. But don't worry for Farasifa, because next session, in the 5th session of Learning from Mangunwijaya, we will have one special session to discuss about Wastu Citra. So don't miss our last session. June 21st, 2024, we will discuss Wastu Citra, a reflection of architecture by Dr. Revianto Budi Santoso. So stay tuned, Farasifa, and don't miss the lecture. Okay, now before we close the session, I will like to invite Sally below from SEAM Encounters to give some closing remarks to our session. Please, Sally.
Thank you very much, Johannita. This was a wonderful session. I'm very impressed. I think the work of Acum is really amazing, and I didn't know that before in this deepness. So thank you very much, Julie Kusvoro, for this wonderful presentation and all the good questions from the audience. I think it's quite a high level of teaching and talking together in all these sessions, and I'm very much looking forward to our next lecture and especially on the work on site in Georgia in July. I think it will be amazing, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Sally Below from Siam Encounters, and hope to see you soon in Jogja. Okay, I would like to express my gratitude. Thank you so much for Mr. Yuri Kusworo, Master of Science, for sharing your insight, your experience with us. It is very inspiring and valuable. And also, I would like to also thanks all the discussion, all the participants, unit master, students, and professors from partner university, and all attendants of this fourth session of learning from Mangun Wijaya. And I will close the session. We will see you, inshallah, in the next pre-event lecture, Vastu Citra, a reflection of architecture, Juni 21st, 2024, by Dr. Evianto Budi Santoso, MArch. Thank you, Mr. Yudi Kusworo. Thank you, all the participants. I will close the session. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.